All guests on ZASLOW Show 2.0 brought to us by the official beer of the program, Johnny Cuba. European roots with that Caribbean soul. Pick up a refreshing German lager in a can. Go to johnnycuba.us. Use the Johnny Locator. You find the nearest location to you. How else are you going to enjoy Thursday night football? We get week 6 started tonight. Make sure you always drink responsibly. And don't forget Johnny Cuba's mantra, stay tranquilo. Our pal joins us every Thursday, a CBS Sports Fantasy Football expert, Jamey Eisenberg. Jamey, always great to see you. And look, tonight we got a good one here, 49ers Seahawks. First, though, let me just get some general thoughts from you on what we saw from the Dolphins last week. So the Dolphins, at least for the time being, get a stay of execution, saving their season. You get a win against New England there. What did you make of what you saw from Tyler Huntley?
Showed some signs, certainly of improvement, and that was to be expected. The more comfortable he gets in the system, the more comfortable he gets with his receivers, Mike McDaniel, all those things. Look, he doesn't have to be Dan Marino. He doesn't have to be Tua Tagovailoa. He doesn't have to be, the best quarterback in the world. Joe Flacco, for example, as a backup coming in. He just has to, be serviceable and keep the Dolphins in games and allow their playmakers to make plays. And so, when you're playing an inferior opponent, it's a game you're supposed to win. I think they probably like to have a similar type performance against Tennessee, a game that was somewhat winnable, especially when the Titans lose their quarterback early in the game. So, look, they're now one game, 2 weeks closer to Tua Tagovailoa getting back, hopefully. And if that happens, based on what the AFC East looks like, they could still win this division. Jets just changed head coaches. So Buffalo's dealing with a bunch of injuries and struggling right now. Patriots are changing their quarterback also. So there's a lot to like about what's still in front for the Dolphins. And if they can get Tua back and everything back on track, they can easily win this AFC East.
Let me get some thoughts from you on what took place with Saleh. What did you make of the way it all went down?
I mean, it's always fun to play conspiracy theorist and how much Aaron Rodgers played a role in this, knowing that Saleh was potentially on the verge of firing his offensive coordinator. And by his, I mean Rodgers. And did he have any say in it? He says no. You want to take him at his word, that's fine. They needed to make a change, whether it was in season or wait until the season was done, give him credit for trying to get ahead of things. And we just got the news that they, did change their play caller. Todd Downing is now going to call plays for the Jets as opposed to Nathaniel Hackett. So maybe this was just something organizationally that was heading, no matter what, change play caller, change head coach, try and salvage, the season and see if they could still, make this thing work. I think the bigger news for the Jets, obviously, is will they make a trade for Devontae Adams? On the injury front, they're getting Morgan Moses, one of their offensive linemen, back this week against the Jets. So big game, as we know. Jets, Bills. Jets win this one. They're right back in the thick of things.
Is there another coach this season that you could see getting fired in season?
The Cowboys have a losing streak. Mike McCarthy certainly is, going to be in consideration. I think that's probably it.
I think Peterson could lose his job in season.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Doug Peterson, 100%. Yeah, that was the scenario I was thinking. I knew there was another one. So they have 2 games in London. The thought would be after London, if they lose both games, he got sort of, I think, a stay of execution by beating the Colts. So if they lose both,
yeah, games, I think if they would have lost last week, I think he'd have been fired this week.
But that's a tough ask to put an interim coach going into London for 2 weeks. So especially since Peterson's got experience doing it. I could see, that's the next one, sure.
All right, let's get to it here, Jamey. So tonight, 49ers Seahawks. This is a good one. You got one team that has struggled. Obviously, the injuries. The Seahawks started out 3-0. They've lost a couple games in a row. What do we think about tonight?
I hope we're going to get a big offensive game on both sides. The 49ers were a huge letdown last week against the Cardinals. Brock Purdy has been a very good NFL quarterback. He's been a bad fantasy quarterback, only one game over 20 fantasy points. Ironically enough, it was that game where he did not have Deebo Samuel and George Kittle. So there are big games coming. This is a very beat-up Seattle defense, as you mentioned. Tariq Woolen, for example, one of their corners, not going to play. Their best pass rusher is not going to play. So this should be an opportunity for the 49ers to do whatever they want. On the other side of the ball, San Francisco's defense has been beat up. We saw last week, Kyler Murray, who's had a miserable history against the 49ers, big run to open the game for the touchdown. Had some success on the ground with James Conner. So if they can establish the run with Ken Walker, who's been fantastic, and keep DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith-Njigba involved. Geno Smith, it's funny. These two guys, I believe they won last week, first and second in passing yards. I'm pretty sure they're still first and second or top 3 in passing yards. Geno yet to have a multiple touchdown game through the air. So they're both due for some big fantasy performances, and I think it happens.
Jamey, you mentioned the Jaguars are in London. So Jaguars and Bears in London this Sunday morning, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. What do you like here, but specifically the Bears? Now that we're seeing Caleb Williams is starting to have the bigger games, do you believe this is now a thing? Like, has Caleb Williams been unleashed now?
To an extent, I mean, it's certainly been a favorable part of their schedule. Colts 2 weeks ago, last week the Panthers, this week the Jaguars. So he's taking advantage of some favorable matchups, and I hope he does in the case of Jacksonville, who's been miserable to opposing quarterbacks. So as he gets more comfortable, the biggest question will be is, and it's always the case for Chicago, how they adjust to the weather. So once they start to get into a little bit more division play and the weather turns colder, can he still throw it around like we're starting to see? But DJ Moore, starting to get on the same page with Williams, as we saw the 2-touchdown game against the Panthers. The run game has certainly been a big part of this because they couldn't run the ball at all the first 2 weeks, first 3 weeks, excuse me, and then DeAndre Swift gets going. So it's a big opportunity for them to get a win and him play well going into their bye week. And look, Jane Daniels has been amazing. You just don't see that from a lot of rookie quarterbacks. Caleb Williams is doing exactly what he needs to do and progressing week by week. So yes, it's been fun to watch.
So let's talk about the Commanders and Ravens and Jaden Daniels in particular. If the Commanders win that division, and Jaden Daniels continues this kind of play, he has this kind of incredible rookie season. Could he be league MVP?
I believe he's top 5 right now in terms of MVP odds. It's Mahomes and Lamar Jackson are up there, and I think he's 5th. So yes, for sure. I mean, rookie of the year and MVP would be somewhat unprecedented for him to win both those awards. But yes, if they win the NFC East and win it handily, you have to give him serious consideration, barring, clearly, Mahomes going undefeated or Lamar Jackson having another outstanding season or somebody else stepping up and playing very well also. But he's going to be in the conversation. Now, this is the toughest test that he'll have, going on the road to play Baltimore. I know the Ravens defense has not been the same, but it's still in Baltimore, and that defense has the ability to make a lot of people uncomfortable. As the names change, as the coordinator changes, it's just the same thing year after year. So we'll see how he overcomes it. My guess would be it's a little bit of a slow start, and then he gets going in the second half. Fantasy-wise, though, he's a top 3 quarterback for me this week. It's just hard to overlook what he's done. Let's
do a little Browns and Eagles here. That is also a 1 p.m. game. And specifically, Deshaun Watson. What the fuck?
It's not all on him, but it's hard not to put a lot of it on him. The offensive line's been a disaster and really beat up. It will be interesting to see if they get Nick Chubb back. He's trending in the direction of potentially playing this week, but he's got at least another 2 weeks to get back on the field. So if they decide to put him out there, that would definitely help because Jerome Ford has not been the answer for their backfield. Amari Cooper gets 8 targets a week and does nothing with them, and that's where I think Deshaun Watson comes into play. So there's a lot that needs to improve. You got an Eagles defense coming off their bye week. We'll see if they continue to get more comfortable in Vic Fangio's system. I like the Eagles DST a lot just because the Browns offensive line's a mess and Watson gives up a lot of sacks. So we'll see if this is the week. But yes, there's not a lot of confidence right now in Deshaun Watson.
All right, top quarterbacks for the weekend, Jamey. Who do we like?
Lamar Jackson is one. Jane Daniels is up there. Jalen Hurts coming back is certainly huge. Let's see how he does. He's been struggling, but now he gets A.J. Brown back. He gets Devontae Smith back. Both those guys missed the last game for the Eagles. So looking forward to seeing what he can do. One guy who's not ranked high, which he typically is Josh Allen. And he's struggled the last couple of weeks. But you have him now without really any receivers if Khalil Shakir misses again. And this Jets defense, I know that they've not been, the best defense based on the expectations coming into the year, but they did a good job against the Vikings overall, shut down Sam Darnold. And I think they'll make things tough on Josh Allen. He's actually the number 8 quarterback for me this week.
Wide receivers.
So you got pretty easy guys at the top. CeeDee Lamb, should have an opportunity to play well in a shootout with Detroit. You have Jamar Chase has been unbelievable. Talk about a guy that's, trying to get paid. He deserves it with what he's done so far this season, certainly rewarding fantasy managers. And number 3 is Amon-Ra St. Brown. Same game, coming back against the Cowboys. That should be fun. It's one of the highest projected scores for the week, understandably so. And so getting Amon-Ra off the bye, getting A.J. Brown healthy and off the bye, those are the top 4 guys for me.
And what about running backs?
So running back, you got Saquon off the bye. He's been great so far this season. I don't think the Browns defense is going to slow him down. Derrick Henry, continues just to defy father time. It's just pretty amazing. And the Washington run defense is nothing that's going to slow him down. James Cook is up there. He'll have to have a big role in the passing game without with Khalil Shakir out. Like the setup for Jordan Mason and Ken Walker. Both those guys in this game. Obviously, Mason taking on that defense that's really beat up. And Ken Walker, the best part about what Ryan Grubb, the offensive coordinator, has done there is involved him in the passing game. And so with him catching the ball and what he's been able to do as a runner, top 5 upside this week in San Francisco.
And what about who have been the biggest waiver wire additions this week, Jamey?
It's actually been a good waiver wire week. Now we're getting a little bit of cold water put on a couple guys just because of some injury situations. So Tyrone Tracy's coming off a huge game for the Giants, but Devin Singletary is going to come back. So just keep an eye on this situation there for the Giants. Tank Bigsby may be becoming the best running back for the Jaguars. Not necessarily the best fantasy running back, but in terms of first and second down opportunities, they may be leaning on Tank Bigsby a little bit more than Travis Etienne. Wide receiver, there was a bunch of guys, and one that's not playing this week, but you should absolutely pick him up. And this is a tricky thing because depending on how your waiver wire, or excuse me, how your you sort by available free agents, Juju Smith-Schuster's on a bye, but 100-yard game, no Rashee Rice. I mean, look, if he's going to get these chances to be the go-to receiver, not the go-to guy because of Kelsey, but the go-to receiver for Patrick Mahomes, you should absolutely be picking him up across the board. So Juju was a good waiver wire addition. Josh Downs, Wan'Dale Robinson, both those guys are playing well, and now Downs. No matter who the quarterback is, clearly he's a little bit better with Joe Flacco, but Downs is going to get an opportunity without Michael Pittman, who's out with this back injury. And then at tight end, Dalton Schultz and Tank Dell, both guys should benefit, unfortunately, with Nico Collins going out. But Schultz and Tyler Conklin until Devontae Adams joins the Jets. Conklin going to be a PPR guy, and Dalton Schultz should take advantage of this opportunity for the next 4 weeks.
And Jamey, any other injury reports, practice situations we need to keep an eye on today?
Giants backfield, just in, seeing what happens with Singletary and Tracy. So if Singletary does miss for whatever reason, then Tracy becomes a must-start guy. Jonathan Taylor still dealing with that ankle injury. Want to see what happens with him. Trey Sermon also popped up on the injury report. He did a nice job stepping in for Taylor. So Tyler Goodson may be somebody you want to add. Brian Robinson Jr. has been great for the Commanders. He's dealing with a knee injury. Tough matchup against Baltimore. Excuse me. But if he starts, you play him. If he's active, you start him. If not, look at Jeremy McNichols and Austin Eckler. You have the Nico Collins injury already, Michael Pittman injury already. Eagles getting healthy, so that's a positive sign. And then Evan Ingram, David Njoku, two tight ends that we're waiting to find out what happens. Ingram looks like he's going to play against the Bears, and Njoku, we don't know exactly what's happening there with the Browns. And then obviously the Colts quarterback situation. Richardson coming back sort of changes the approach for the receiving core there for Indianapolis.
Jamey, excellent job as always. Tell everybody how they can hear you leading up to Thursday Night Football tonight and then throughout the weekend.
CBS Sports HQ is our 24-hour streaming network. You can check us out on our podcast, which is also streamed on YouTube. It's Fantasy Football Today. And then you can always get our written content on cbssports.com and follow me on Twitter at Jamey Eisenberg.
Thanks, Jamey. Happy New Year, man. Easy fast this weekend. Yom Kippur. Always appreciate you hanging out with us. We'll talk next week.
You too, man. Safe travels.